Boeing spent close to $1 billion building 4 planes that exist for one reason. They fly other planes around the world before those other planes are finished. They look like a 747 that swallowed a whale. And they only fly between a handful of airports because nobody else needs them. Airbus did the exact same thing. 6 planes, different shape, same purpose. Both companies will tell you this is about engineering. It isn't. It's about a decision most people have never heard of. The plane is called the Dreamlifter. Boeing built 4 of them by buying used 747 passenger jets and grafting an enormous bulge onto the top of the fuselage. The cargo hold can swallow an entire 787 fuselage section. Across the Atlantic, Airbus operates 6 of its own freaks. The Beluga XL, named after the whale it resembles. They have one of the biggest cargo holds of any aircraft in service today. Both fleets fly daily. Neither aircraft is for sale, neither carries paying customers. They exist only to ship half-finished planes between factories. At first glance, that sounds like an engineering problem. It is not. The real story is 2 things happening at once: the bizarre engineering required to make these planes work, and the financial decision that made them necessary in the first place. To understand why these planes exist, we have to start with how Boeing and Airbus actually build aircraft today. Most people picture aircraft assembly as one giant factory in Seattle or Toulouse. That picture has been wrong for 20 years. A modern Boeing 787 is roughly 70% built outside of Boeing. The wings come from Mitsubishi in Japan. The forward fuselage comes from Spirit Aero Systems in Wichita, Kansas. The horizontal stabilizer comes from Leonardo in Foggia, Italy. The aft fuselage is built in North Charleston, South Carolina, where final assembly also happens. By the time a 787 rolls off that line, it has already been assembled in pieces on 3 different continents. Those pieces are too big to ship by sea fast enough to hold production schedules, so they fly. A wing for a 787 weighs about 12.5 tons. Shipping a fuselage barrel from Japan to Charleston by sea would take 6 weeks. By air, the same trip takes 10 hours. The faster the parts move, the faster Boeing gets paid. A finished plane delivered is cash. A 787 wing floating across the Pacific is not. Here's what most people miss. Boeing didn't have to build the 787 this way. They chose to. The reason was money. When Boeing committed to the 787 program in the early 2000s, the projected development budget was around $7 billion. The board's instruction to engineers was simple: develop the new plane for less than the previous 777 had cost a decade earlier. Even that ambition was more than Boeing wanted to put on its own balance sheet. So Boeing offered foreign governments and foreign suppliers a deal. Invest your own money. Take the manufacturing risk. Get a piece of every 787 sold. Japan's 3 largest industrial conglomerates jumped at it. Reports from the period suggest the Japanese government extended up to $2 billion in low-interest loans to back the work. Italy did the same for Leonardo. Boeing got the 787 for a fraction of what it would have cost. The price was simple. Boeing no longer controlled where the plane was built. Those subsidies later became one of the most expensive trade fights in aviation history. Boeing and Airbus would spend nearly 2 decades accusing each other of illegal state aid worth tens of billions. Boeing didn't see it that way at the time. And here's where it gets stranger. The Dreamlifter was the answer to a problem Boeing created for itself. Built from used 747 passenger jets, each one was hollowed out and given a new upper fuselage that bulges 30 feet above the original line of the plane. The result has roughly 3 times the cargo volume of a standard 747 freighter. The tail swings open sideways to load entire wings or fuselage barrels. The conversion took years and cost close to $1 billion across the 4 aircraft fleet. The fleet flies between 5 factory airports across 3 continents: Nagoya in Japan, Grottaglione in Italy, and Wichita, Charleston, and Everett in the United States. Boeing operates them through Atlas Air. They are not certified to carry anything except 787 components. If you wanted to charter one, you could not. They are some of the most capable freighters in the world, and they will never carry a paying kilogram of cargo for as long as they exist. Over in Europe, Airbus has the same problem for a different reason. Airbus was not built by financial logic. It was built by a political treaty. When the company was created in 1970, 4 countries, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and Spain, each demanded a guaranteed industrial share. France got final assembly in Toulouse. Germany got fuselage work in Hamburg. The United Kingdom got wings, built in a small factory in Broughton, Wales. Spain got tail sections. That treaty still shapes Airbus today. Every wing for every Airbus narrow-body aircraft and most wide-body aircraft is still built in that one Welsh factory. Its runway is just over 2,000 meters long, about 2/3 the length of a typical international runway. For heavily loaded aircraft, the operationally usable distance is shorter still. Airbus's preferred design for its new transport plane was based on a larger platform. The Welsh runway said no. The entire design of the Beluga XL was sized around one short runway in Wales. The fleet itself flies between 11 separate sites in those 4 countries. None can be moved. Each represents a country's industrial commitment to the consortium. Closing a factory means breaking a 50-year-old international agreement. The engineer who led the Beluga XL program, Bertrand George, was given 2 instructions. Have the projected development cost. Have the first aircraft flying within 5 years. Airbus pulled it off for €1 billion. That fragility nearly broke into the open one night in 2013. In November of that year, one of the 4 Dreamlifters flying from New York to Wichita landed at the wrong airport. The pilots had been cleared into McConnell Air Force Base. Instead, they touched down 8 nautical miles away at Colonel James Jabara Airport, a small public airfield used mostly by light aircraft and business jets. Its runway is just over 6,000 feet, half the length of McConnell's, and well below what a fully loaded 747 needs to take off again. The Dreamlifter sat there for nearly 15 hours while engineers calculated whether it could safely leave. Because of one navigation mistake at night, a quarter of Boeing's entire 787 supply chain stopped moving. 4 planes carry every 787 part across the Pacific. 3 is not enough. The story made the news as a charming aviation oddity. Inside Boeing, it was a warning about how thin the margin really was. That's the structural truth nobody on a tour of an aircraft factory will mention. Both Boeing and Airbus chose to scatter their manufacturing across continents, Boeing for financial reasons, Airbus for political ones. The bizarre planes that fly between those factories aren't engineering marvels. They're the visible cost of those choices. The Dreamlifter is a Boeing finance decision in physical form. The Beluga XL is a 1970 European political treaty wearing a face. Here's the part almost no aviation channel covers. There's a joke inside the industry, dating back decades. Every Airbus is delivered on the wings of a Boeing. For more than 20 years, Airbus shipped its parts using converted Boeing Stratocruisers, American piston engine airliners from the 1940s, modified by a US company called Aero Spacelines. They were called Super Guppies. By the early 1990s, the Super Guppies were falling apart. Airbus needed a replacement. So they built the original Beluga and spent $1 billion doing it. 20 years later, even the original Beluga was running out. Airbus evaluated everything else on the market: the Russian Antonov, Boeing's military transport, the C-17, and the Dreamlifter itself. They asked Boeing whether they could buy or modify it. Boeing said no. Not because they couldn't sell it, but because the moment Airbus depended on a Boeing aircraft for daily logistics, Boeing would effectively control how fast Airbus could build planes. A small delay on one fleet of cargo jets could slow A350 production by months. Airbus did the math. They had no choice but to spend €1 billion designing their own bizarre transport plane. The Beluga XL isn't just engineering, it's industrial sovereignty. Both planes are now flying more than ever before. So the real story of these planes isn't that Boeing and Airbus built them because no other plane was big enough. It's that both companies built them because they had no other choice. Boeing chose globalized manufacturing for financial reasons 20 years ago, and the Dreamlifter is the bill they're still paying. Airbus accepted dispersed manufacturing as the price of being a multinational company in 1970, and the Beluga XL is the price they're paying today. These planes look extraordinary. They look like engineering pushed to the edge of imagination, but they aren't. They're receipts. As long as a 787 has Japanese wings and an Italian center fuselage, the Dreamlifter must fly. As long as an A350 has British wings and a German tail, the Beluga XL must fly. The strangest planes in the world don't exist because of engineering. They exist because building a Boeing or an Airbus has never really been about engineering at all.